Today, at this session, we will be talking about InsurTech, about the application of innovative technologies, and the big data analysis, robotization, different cloud technologies and services, and we'll be talking about how we can apply that in the insurance market. I'd like to introduce our today's speakers. On my left, Pavel Butenka, who is Vice President and Director of the Digital Business Unit from Rosgostrach. Right next to him, we have Igor Fatyanov, Chief Executive Officer from Zeta Insurance, member of the board of the Russian Council of Motor Insurance. And then we have Frank Shikhaliev. He's an independent expert, but quite recently he has been working in Renaissance company. He has been working there for 10 years, and there he introduced big data analysis technology right from scratch. Then we have Alexander Litenkov. I think you know him quite well. Alexandra is member of the Council of the Board, Rosgostrach, Director for Strategy. And then Ilya Zolin, Managing Director from Accenture, Moscow, and he is responsible in the Russian branch office for the development of the practices in insurance. Why are we talking today about InsurTech? We're talking about that because, as always and quite recently over the last few years, the competition gets tougher in the Russian market, and the economic situation is quite volatile, and insurers are looking for points of growth for their methods to reduce costs, and they are testing new products and new models. And InsurTech technologies, big data analysis, automatization, and robotics, and the use of drones are quite extensively applied. And the main goal of those technologies is to help the companies achieve this goal. And we should understand that the technologies are divided into two groups. The first one, project technologies that are aimed at creating something new, introducing new products, introducing new methods to bring them to clients, the insurance marketplaces, telematics products, other products in this group. And the second one are the technologies that help companies not to create something new, but to improve the already existing products and processes. All the technologies and projects in InsurTech that are related to creation of something new are at the initial stage of experiments and of tests, and it is confirmed by the fact that many startups testing, for example, losses management technology using the drones. These are only startups, and insurers are not developing this expertise and inside the company, and they are looking at what startup will achieve. And the technologies aimed at optimizing business processes, at making that faster, a faster reaction to changes. They are status quo for many companies in the insurance market. These are specific experiments, and they are growing that inside the companies. They are developing their technologies, and they are creating certain think tanks inside the companies in order to optimize technologies, and mainly they are using automatization of decision making and big data analysis. And today, with the leading practitioners in InsurTech, we'll be discussing the value of using these technologies in the long-term prospect for insurance companies, which economic effect can be achieved in optimizing these business processes, which components does the director of organization need in order not to be satisfied with only one successful example, but to build a think tank in this sector? And how can this think tank be introduced into the structure of the company? How can that fit in order to have successful projects implemented? So today we'll be talking about all these topics with our speakers. And before we get down to the details, dear colleagues, could you please share with us your experience of real projects, implementation in monetizing data, in automating decision-making processes, which directions in retail insurance, in other areas, in other sectors have you implemented these projects? And if possible, probably you can share with us about economic effect that was achieved in this process. Pavel, let's start with you. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. Thank you, Stepan, for this introduction. I'd like to have a look at that, at the analysis of data in a broader sense. And if talking about my previous experience, I can say that the most successful one was the customization of product in the real-time effects using 200 different parameters. We used a lot of external data when a person visited website, and we customized it for each request. So it was customized to a maximum extent. And if we talk about the results, it's no secret. The conversion of ADF was 3%. The implementation of this technology increased that by 1.5%. And as for money, you can calculate that. Yes, it's a significant amount of money. Igor, what did you have in your practice? Thank you. Well, insurers have a lot of practices like this. I used to have projects in different sectors, three main directions: underwriting, and underwriting for insurers, the natural type, the natural ingredient. It is based on big data, and we are talking about retail, of course. A viewpoint was expressed yesterday that nothing had been done there, but yes, we did a great job there. Any project in underwriting is related to the use of big data. Now we connect a scoring database, and now we are analyzing our clients. 99% of retail users are analyzed in this system. We use about 4 to 5 databases for this purpose. And calculating all of that, we seeing large effect. The profitability grew significantly. As for the regulation, it is a red flag, the indexation of losses, and the analysis of actions by maldoers. And the system shows us the most probable cases for that. We tried to use that in marketing, and we didn't get a large effect. But as for machine learning for discounts and for probability of discounts, it can be quite effective and efficient, and we see some potential there. A lot of factors that have to be taken into consideration. Thank you. But the effect is still a secret. Okay, understood. We do have it. Frank, could you please share with us the experience that you've had in Renaissance? Yes, in large number of companies, we use that in marketing, in sales, we use machine learning technologies, and I'd like to say that in cross sales, we analyze their propensity towards this or that type of sales, and we have come down to that. We have our client base, and we have the unified register that we are analyzing. And the second aspect, we applied it in HR. So we build a graph of the organization, and then we have had a look at which department got the least number of emails and analyzed the role. So it was unusual case of application of these technologies. Automation is not only used to optimize business processes and interaction with clients, but also for back office optimization processes like for HR and the losses management. And the example of Frank is quite indicative. Alexander, probably you can share with us some other interesting cases. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. So what have we done in InsurTech? Besides what has been already mentioned by Igor, the tarification, the underwriting, management, regulation, and marketing. Of course, in retail, we have scoring model, pre-insurance model. We have models in medicine, and it helps us to score the documents that are coming from hospitals, and there are some cross-sales models for different products. And what has not been mentioned, the process model, we are planning to have a separate department for that, and it forecasts the necessary amount of people that have to be brought into this category in order to manage and automate some massive processes at the peaks. Okay, thank you, Alexander. And Ilya, you look at the insurance market from the above. Accenture is collaborating with a lot of different insurance companies, like with SaaS company. Probably you could complement what your colleagues have mentioned. Dear colleagues, good afternoon. First of all, as I see it, insurance in Russia, in comparison with the banks, is compared to what we used to have 3 to 5 years ago. And for IT and banks, we used to have a lot of investment. But over the last year and a half, it's a very active process of investment into insurance companies. And they do understand that they are lagging behind. And now they are trying to come up with new ideas. And as for investment projects, we have 3 main areas: losses, underwriting, and client analytics, which is marketing. As for underwriting, we have significant fact. First of all, leading insurance companies, they are managing the losses in the car industry. The application of big data analysis have helped to eliminate some systemic problems. As for the losses, the use of analytics in order to get profound segmentation to manage losses in an automated regime helps us to reduce the payments by 15%, and the area of marketing and client analytics is the least developed area for insurance companies in Russia, and we have to actively develop it. Okay, Ilya, thank you very much. Colleagues, I hope you've seen that in practice, the application of new technologies in insurance, they are not only theoretical things, but they are bringing already financial benefits and financial results. However, and we talk about it, it sounds like a very simple thing, but when we deal with practice and when we want to monetize data that has been accumulated in our insurance company, we face a lot of difficulties that can be overcome, but you'd better know them beforehand in advance than face them afterwards. And let's imagine that you are a director of an insurance company and you've listened to the representatives of the leading major consulting companies, understand that the use of data analysis in order to monetize data and also the technologies of automation very important trend, and many insurance companies are already within this trend, and inside the companies some of them have already established think tanks. There are specific departments with the employees, and organization chart is adapted to these purposes in order to monetize data on a large scale. And if you are a director of a company, you face several questions to go from scratch, from establishing think data and not knowing what data analysis is, and going up to the large scale of production, the use of data that helps you to reduce costs, to improve profitability. So you have to resolve three issues. First of all, you have to understand which business cases can be implemented using these new technologies. Also understand how specific business model of your insurance company have influence on the stages of how you prioritize the stages, for example, reducing losses. In order to reduce losses, you have to combat the fraud, first of all. Some companies are focused at creating a more positive client's experience, and then they have to invest them into the target marketing project. So you have to understand which business cases you need and to understand the timeline for the launch of the think tank. The second large issue have to purchase all the components in order to establish the think tank. You have to get the employees, you have to get all the elements in order to establish it, and you have to understand how you will be purchasing data for that. And the third large issue, you have the think tank, you have bought the machines, everything is ready to work, and then the employees start using these machines. But the think tank will not be operating in a vacuum. It has to be built in the already existing system, and we need to have efficient interaction with other departments of the company in order for this think tank to produce what they need. This is the large issue you have to resolve in order to have the efficient operation of this think tank. And today, with the participants of our round table, we'll discuss in more details which issues should be resolved by insurance companies in order to go through all these stages.
And so my first question is to Ilya Zolin. I remind you that he's the executive director of Moscow office of the company that specializes in working with insurance companies. So the first issue is, where do you get the business cases and ideas about process optimization? And the Russian practice shows that insurance companies look at the banking experience or foreign experience. Well, if you talk about banks, everything seems to be clear. They have credit scoring at the banks, and there's credit scoring at the insurance companies. The banks managed to exclude people from credit scorings. They install some neuronal network that makes decisions for them, and everything looks fine. The decision is made automatically. It seems like let's replace all the underwriters with machines and let the machine make decisions. But Control C, Control S in insurance is impossible in actual life. And the same story happens with any process optimization that exists in banks. And the same happens with cases that Russian insurers try to borrow from foreign insurance companies. So my question is to Ilya, who has a helicopter view upon the market. And Ilya, where would you seek ideas of business cases for process optimization and decision-making automation for the Russian insurance companies? And can domestic insurers borrow some business cases from banking or from foreign experience? Or are there some fundamental philosophical differences in how insurance business works in Russia and how the banks work and how the foreign insurers work, and how those differences impact the search for business ideas? Thank you for the question, Stepan. Well, first of all, I don't think all the banks have an ideal situation that you described. In some banks, the decision about credit is made automatically. In some banks, they process electronic mail manually and send letters to underwriters and to the security people. So you cannot average here. As for the insurers, certainly the experience of banks and foreign insurers must be analyzed and used. There's a lot of common things, but adaptation is necessary. If you compare Russia with foreign markets, I would note that the level of insurance culture in Russia is lower. It's what you can sell as mandatory and quasi-mandatory insurance. People do not feel a need in voluntary insurance, so the agent's play is important, and quite often after paying the premium, the insurer quite often takes that premium. Well, you have to return the money, yes. If you compare with the banks, the key difference between insurers and underwriters and banks is the role of intermediaries. The banks sell directly. However, the insurers do not have so many direct contacts with clients, and quite often the products are sold by intermediaries, and that means that the quality of data about the client suffers. Sometimes even the contact information is not reliable. The hard copy processes and the frequency of contacts with clients. In bank, there's some activity, and the client who uses a bank card makes a few transactions a day, and the bank has a much better understanding of the needs of the client and to provide personification. With insurers, it's 2 or 3 contacts a year. In the best case, it's prolongation, and in many cases, it's dispute about losses, and the background of that interaction is negative. So it's infrequent, and there's no reason to interact with the client. And should take account of that. So what are the foreign insurers and banks doing? So there are such big trends. The trend is that banks understood that the customer does not need financial products as such. The client doesn't want a mortgage. They want an apartment. They don't want an automotive credit. They want a car. And quite often, car sharing is something that satisfies the client. And the banks come to the idea that you shouldn't use the product-centered model and to impose those products on the client. You need to understand the client, and you need to find their needs at the earliest stage and to try to satisfy their comprehensive needs. Russian examples of that is DomClick, started by Sberbank. That's a good channel of mortgage sales, but it's not direct sales. It's an opportunity for the client to find an apartment. In foreign countries, the smart house products are very well sold, which protects the client against theft, against burglary, against leakage. And this is a comprehensive product that is offered as home protection. The second trend is hyper-personalization. Previously, the clients split their client base into macro segments and worked with each segment separately. Now, if there is a possibility, and the banks do have that possibility much more than the insurance companies, they make individual proposals to the client at the right time. So it's not a cold marketing campaign, but the product is often offered when the client needs it. In Brazil, for instance, they made a possibility to obtain automotive credit in 15 minutes, and they managed to increase their share in the shrinking market. So the client comes to the store and he sits in the car, and there's a good possibility that they will buy. And if not, they will. If it takes 2 days to approve the loan, that means the client might think may not want it. So that gamification is the frequency of interaction with clients through digital channels, first and foremost, but it is a relevant interaction, reasonable interaction, yes. Through that interaction, we obtain a possibility to better understand the client needs. And secondly, we get points of contact at which we can offer our product, not impose through marketing campaigns, through mailing or campaigns or so. And a multi-channelism. Well, actually, I believe that multi-channelism in insurance is one of the main trends, because there is interaction through agents, there is interaction through digital channels, there are contact centers, and they're not integrated usually. So the insurance companies certainly need to integrate all those channels to help the intermediaries sell, help them understand the client, and provide a comprehensive product to the client. Well, summing up, Ilya, probably just copying bank cases and insurance cases from abroad may be a wrong thing to do, because there are specific features in our business which are different from banking, and the environment in which our insurers and foreign insurers work, such as general culture of the clients and regulatory framework. So you suggest that apart from looking at foreign and banking experience, you suggest that insurance companies should study the business processes, their own business processes, in order to increase their interactivity, personalization of communication, and so on. Yes, and I would say not just the business process, but to better understand the client experience, the client needs. Colleagues, any comments or questions? Yes, Igor? I would add, I don't quite understand why automation of decision-making at insurance companies is much lower than in banking. Well, if you take any retail insurance, it's tens of millions of policies, it's cascos, it's half of the retail market, and it's huge, and it's mostly done automatically. And as a foreign employee of Zurich, Russian STP level, without involving the underwriter, is much higher than in Europe. I will not go into detail, but I think that this is a very good indicator. And everything else, well, about multi-channelism and more touch points, that I agree with. As a practitioner, I can think this is a need that is critical for us. And that's For instance, there's always a question of mobile applications. The insurers try to produce them. This is not a very expensive product, but using this, a person uses that mobile application once a year, and then next year they just forget about it and download it again. Yeah, well. So in 1 year, it's deleted from their phones. One of the Russian insurance companies invented a combination between mobile medical insurance with a classical insurance engine, and the people somehow get used to that button, and they act more or less reasonably. And for the story with marketplaces, with bio-identification, certainly is something that saves the insurance company. But I'm not certain. Well, I asked one of the insurers, do you use bio-identification? They said, no, the central bank doesn't allow us. Any more comments? From my experience, it's very difficult to find innovative decisions, because these are the trends and the problems are clear, and it depends on the channels of distribution and your competitors' distribution channels. But it's very difficult to find talents and innovative solutions in insurance, because insurance is seen as commodity. And in our practice, we introduced some accelerators a few years ago in order to educate people from their school bench. And I haven't seen any innovative solutions during the last couple of years, and I think it's a big problem that talents and innovations in insurance business are not generated, and it's not clear where you get them from. So what remains is to look at the Western markets and to adapt, to create your own innovation labs in-house, and it can be debated what is more efficient, developing your own innovative division or integration. And I think that it's a big problem that I cannot see where I can get innovative projects, and it's a big problem for me. Very well, thank you very much, colleagues. Well, coming back to what we started with, if you don't think about setting your own data monetization think tank, it's dangerous. So the idea of hackathons is very interesting. I know that a lot of companies do that in order to find new ideas, in order to monetize their data. Well, there's a few means of finding ideas for business cases. You should be careful and cautious, because you need to creatively adapt the experience of Russian banks and foreign companies. So there's 20 business cases on your desk. What do you start with? Well, actually, the answer depends on two other questions, and that is, what are the specific features of our operations? So are we among the top 3 insurance companies or not? Do we work in all the regions, or there are some regions where we do not work? And what is our strategy? To reduce losses or to stop the outflow of clients? And after answering those questions, you can decide what project you can start with. And it depends on this data monetization map and how it's structured. Igor, my next question is to you. On the one hand, you are a middle-sized company. Certainly, you differ in your business model from the big insurance companies, and judging by your recent articles, you are testing the data monetization technologies. So, on the other hand, you are on the frauds countering committee, and that means that you talk a lot to other insurance companies with different business models of different sizes, and certainly you touch upon the issue of data monetization in your conversations with them. Igor, is there any, are there any specific features with small and medium-sized insurance company, how the mid-size insurance company strategy impacts what you focus upon, and why, and maybe even the small business companies have some niche applications of that data analysis applications that are not available to big insurance companies. And maybe you can talk about the big insurer company. Maybe they have their own specific features of using those technologies. Thank you. Good question. Well, actually, three main areas: underwriting, regulation, and marketing. Everything that relates to big data analysis and machine learning in the sense of underwriting and in retail, it's part of their everyday business. It's a question of whether you are in business or not. If you cannot do that, such an insurer will probably last a couple of years, and then the regulator or the clients will close that business. So, from the standpoint of a need of application, it doesn't really matter whether you're a big company or a small one. Everyone must have that. Otherwise, it's impossible to implement the basic function of a company, that is risk assessment. And I'm certainly talking about my company. Well, and if we can believe that linear regression is part of the machine learning, well, in some sense, and certainly the insurers have been successfully using it for the last 20 years. There is specialized software that the top 20 companies know about, and probably others know something about it. And it's a basic story. Some so-called linear models that have been used by all the insurers for the last 20 years, because you know, the first 10 years of the Russian insurance market was a corporate market. So all the insurers apply those things, basically. As for the machine learning is really used in settling conflicts, and probably in the West, the assessment of loss as a method of machine learning, when you can look at the photograph and assess, and you need a big database of pictures, and probably that is something that you need. All the three biggest companies, Liberty and Alliance, I believe, and they have it as a pilot project yet.
That's why there is small difference there. I'm not talking about marketing. There can be different solutions applied. So there are some differences between large companies and small ones, and the largest difference is that the top 5 companies are guided by external data sources primarily, an integration with mobile operators, with credit histories bureaus, the repay database, and they are forced to do that in order to efficiently manage the risk. And small insurance companies add expert models that have to be integrated into the system. As an example, we have had a live discussion. We did have it yesterday. We have credit histories bureaus that accumulate the data. And it is used to combat fraud. And in order to have a look at the history, it costs 500 rubles. And large companies are saying that they will not provide that free of charge. But there are proposals to make that free of charge. It's an obvious discussion for insurance companies. Their history of insurance over the last 3 to 5 years is the main factor in providing their tariffs. And the majority of losses are generated by 20 people. And if you get rid of those problematic people, then you achieve success. And the main clients come to different insurance companies. And we may have about 3 million clients. And this is an external story. And it is accessible for some insurance companies, and we can have disputes about how accessible it is and about penetration of CNC insurance in Russia, and the level of penetration is quite low in our country. And it's a low figure, and there is there are some differences, and external and internal data. That is the largest difference between large insurance companies and small insurance companies. And there are some other factors that impact the process as well. And some people, because of the large volume controlled by large insurance companies, they go there. The second aspect is the use of expert assessments, and for a small company to use it is a native thing, a more native thing than for a large company. For example, we may have MTPL or CNC insurance, and there is a branch office, a small company in one of the regions. They provide insurance policies in their respective regions, in their respective centers. And the local company is providing policies in certain centers, but in some of them, they do not provide it. And I'm asking, why aren't you doing that? They say that there is a lot of fraud in this town. We will not do that. The large company, a federal company, will provide policies in this town as well, because they have their level of penetration at about 30%. And it will be more expensive from the economic point of view to integrate scoring model than just to provide policies to everybody. That's why it is a large problem for large insurance companies. And now there is a huge gap and a large trend in MTPL. One of the companies said that we had a remarkable scoring model. They accumulated data. They brought employees from different companies, and this model showed everything in a better and efficient way. And we will provide policies and then just go ahead. And then they got the profit, which was several times higher. We will see whether this model provides you the right information or not. We will learn that in a little while, but automated decision-making system based on machine learning has been applied in some companies. It is happening on the market, and we see this trend. It's a characteristic example from practice. So they ignore some things, experts' viewpoints. Only 1 minute is left for me to speak. Okay. Well, generally, that is what applies to machine learning. Approaches of different companies almost the same in terms of managing losses, the use of data provided by credit histories bureaus. And it's a coordinated approach. Trying to identify fraud. We launched the tests reports from these bureaus, and it's obvious. We clearly see that the machine learning helps us in that. When we see a car that was supposedly fallen apart and never existed, and then it appears in 1 year, and it is almost impossible to do that manually. And of course, in an automated regime, you can do that. So we've showed this data, and insurance companies were surprised to see these results. So I think these are the difference, and these are prospects. Thank you, Igor. So if we sum that up, the business processes that have been optimized at large and small companies are almost the same. But smaller companies, they have to rely on the forecast and predictive analytics on external data, because due to the fact that they're a small company, they have not accumulated a large volume of data. Yes, okay, thank you. Dear colleagues, maybe you would like to add something to the previous speaker. I have a question. In underwriting, the banking data or telecom data, as you see it, is it available? Is it accessible? And can you apply that for different purposes? It's an excellent question. Unlike the fact when own data are not shown by insurers, these data that you mentioned, they are broad access. Everybody can see that. You can buy that data to use it. Almost all large companies are using it, and some banks are providing the approximate data, so you feel that the efficiency of data use is not very high. And the first test, they showed the correlation for CNC. We trace about 90 factors in the model. And we assess, we evaluate that. And for credit scoring, it is used as well. Then we saw that it went down and tried to find the reason for that. For example, you took out a loan and then paid that back and pays very fast, and then the scoring goes down, though he does no harm, but it is accessible. And as for the bureaus, the majority of companies that are working with CNC, they're actively using it. Excellent. As for telecom, it's a surprising story. They're even cooler than the banks, potentially, but telecoms face a lot of problems. The unification of data. The banking, they have identification systems, and that's why it is a clear-cut approach. But telecom operators are different in this. Just I will give you an example from real life. We did a lot in telematics, and some people say that I didn't achieve a lot of success with telematics, but very soon we will have telematics 2.0. You have 1 minute left, and the telematic is a built-in thing. And it will help us to set the tariffs for clients, for miles, for minutes, and that's great. But then they mentioned that we do not have client data. And the SIM card, yes, we know this, but we cannot provide you with any more data. Some additional services can be ordered, but potentially they are much stronger because they can localize a person wherever he is. he got into a car, and automobile. As for automobile insurance, they're buying that once a year. It is potentially a more relevant story. And Beeline is selling that, but it has not achieved a lot of success. But they will improve the data, and it will become even more informative. Thank you. Fine. We understood which business cases we can see on the market, and we understood that there is almost no difference between small companies and large companies. There are some specific features, what Igor was talking about. That it does not impact anything, but you have to take care of including more data sources into your system. But another aspect that you should be aware of when you're evaluating the benefits of the think tank, when you're planning everything, the implementation in the long-term prospect, it's important to understand that the business processes are divided into two categories: the back-office processes, the compliance, what happens inside the company is related to losses, and there is no interaction with client in these processes. They are not visible for end users, but there are processes that related to interaction with the clients, the cross-sales, the inspection, the complaints management from the call center, and it implies communication with clients. And it's important to understand the potential impact of the improvement of the technologies, the improvement of business processes thanks to these technologies on these parts. And here, the think tank for monetizing data becomes practical in terms of reducing the costs, and it becomes a strategic story as well, because if we change inside your company the mode of interaction with the client using machine learning technology, then it's obvious, then clients will feel that, and it will have an impact on their loyalty, on their attitudes towards you in future. Pavel, I know that you have had an extensive experience in optimizing business processes using data analysis technologies in insurance that is targeted at improvement of clients' experience. So which types of interaction with clients are more efficient? And based on your practice, what do clients feel, and how does that influence their attitude? And can we manage these changes in clients' attitudes towards insurance companies? How can that be done? And what are the main advantages in the long-term prospects in the use of these optimized technologies? Yes, thank you for the question. Well, we can divide this question into two parts: interaction with clients and optimization of business processes inside the company. I'm more in charge of optimizing the interaction with the clients and the direct insurance and digital channels, and in general for insurance companies. It is very important for a client to interact with the company for 2 times or even more. And it is a serious problem indeed, because insurance companies in Russia do not have a very good distribution network, so they experience difficulties. And if we talk about what a client can get from the implementation of these data analytics, we talk about 3 things: maximum customization of a product in the real-time regime. And it's no secret that now we are undergoing transformation. We are elaborating solutions for dealers, networks, for clients' networks, and seller or the distribution channel is interacting with the client, and they already have customized products. And my previous experience shows that customization of a product increases a lot a conversion in sales. So it is of paramount importance. The second part that we are trying to develop in our company is the shift from commodity to service. The idea is that we are confident that insurance product is not a super attractive thing that generates a lot of interest on the part of clients. And now we perceive that as an anchor in the connection with the clients. And when a person has a look at certain products, and we have a lot of relevant data about different aspects of a person's life. Telecoms are experiencing great difficulties, as the previous speaker said, because they lack some data. At insurance companies, we have legal access to data about about different spheres of a person's life. The telecom, they don't see that, and they are not offering this service for these areas. So these two important things: customization of a real-time customization of products, and the shift from insurance business to the service company, will be impossible without data analysis and without unification system and unification scheme. Many insurance companies, they do not understand anything about their clients, and these, of course, results in the problems in the development. There is a significant problem which is related to the following. Some companies have clients, but they do not have the necessary knowledge that they may have if they tried to. So the customization of products and data analysis are the key pillars for that. Many companies are using less than 10% of the potential data knowledge about the client. Pavel, could you please tell us whether you've had practical experience in creating services based on data analysis and optimization of business services that can be seen not as a commodity, as you have already said, but which will help a client see an insurance company as a partner. So it will be a shift, it will be a change in their perceptions. Have you had an experience of implementing such a project? Yes, we are doing it right now.
We made an ecosystem for car owners. What can be done to increase the touch points with client, not without talking about insurance? You need to solve the client's simple problem. In Moscow and St. Petersburg, it's owning a car because it's difficult, and based on the loyalty system, based on telematics, and telematics was the basic element, and based on the mobile applications and also the navigator, the client could choose the route. Yes, I'll try to briefly describe it. So you can choose a route, and we assess the real time and what is the possibility of a collision, and we added points to his loyalty system, and he could spend those points. Because we understand where they live and where they go, we select the most relevant proposal concerning the loyalty system, and thus we increase the client's involvement in interaction with our company. And we don't say that the insurance product is important in our interaction with the client. And a lot of speakers yesterday said that even if interaction with banking application is rarer than a week, the application dies. We understand that the insurance applications are used once a year, and honestly, I don't understand, unless we change the paradigm of our interaction with the client, what might happen with the client for him to use the application. Our experience has been successful. We increased the number of touch points with the client. We increased our interaction, and that resulted in the increase in upsale, and we started earning through partnership proposals, and we offered discounts, and we were paid money. So, summarizing, the customization of a product, adapting it to a micro segment of the client base, plus increasing the event generation of those touch points with the client when the insurance company interacts with the clients through the mobile application, through telematics, that changes the attitude of a client towards the insurance company. They start to perceive the company as a partner who cares about his health, safety, about his car. And in your practice, we saw an significant decrease of LTV. Well, for us, what is important is OPEX and LTV, but I can't say OPEX is very high in insurance, and the insurance market is competing in ecosystems now. And probably the introduction of ecosystem, that may be a fashionable notion, but it's something that is necessary for us. The introduction of an ecosystem retains the client, increases the LTV, and reduces your OPEX. Because it's very difficult to struggle for new clients in the insurance market, and particularly because the insurers did not develop their distributions, and quite often they are slaves to distribution networks. Well, it happens so that this is where we are, but this situation can be changed. Well, nice to hear that. Colleagues, thank you very much. Pavel, colleagues, maybe you have comments or questions? Microphone, please. Well, the concept pay as you go is not represented in Russia. The speaker is not using the mic. Thank you for the question. In our practice, we also considered these products. Why didn't we use them? Well, because it reduces the average premium, and there is also logistical difficulties, because each time you have to write out a policy, and the client does not want to launch an insurance process each time he takes the car. And you need to understand that this is the same person that was insured, and to make a person turn on the mobile application in order to switch on the insurance is a utopic idea. For instance, when I drive in Moscow, quite often I have to do something, and each time making a person each time inspect a car is too much trouble, and I that must be done automatically, and probably that is not so critically important, because even abroad I haven't seen it, or maybe in Israel, because they do that using short text messages. Colleagues? Yeah, certainly. For a minute. There's Russian products like that. We also tested them. There was a company, R Telematic, I think. Yeah. Well, it still exists. Yes. That exists. Pay as you drive is, well, you've driven 100 miles and he's paid in accordance with the mileage. And what you were talking about is insurance by minute. And it's very rarely used in the world, and it's not used in Russia at all, because the colleague was right. Really, we tested that. So switching on and off, well, forget about it. And going around and taking pictures of cars is utopia. Even in car sharing, people do not take those pictures, although this is the closest concept. Thank you. Thank you. Well, a heated discussion. By the way, well, I see that some people are leaving, going to other sections. After the end of this session, we'll have an open discussion at desk number 20. That's monetization desk, and it's right opposite this door. Well, you as the head of the insurance company, you have defined the business cases and the sequence of those business cases, and how you can strategically use automated decision making, and how that can really change the client's attitude and maybe a change in the business model. Right. So we've have a plan. Now it's time to implement it. Now, if we want to have that project think tank, we need to buy or create some components for this think tank or factory. What does a car manufacturer need? You need equipment, you need tools, you need premises, you need a team, you need infrastructure, and actually, in order to start the data monetization factory, you need to do some preparation. So my next question is to Frank Shkaliev, who built an analytical subdivision from the scratch at Nissan. So Frank, what should the insurance company do before they launch this factory of data monetization project, the infrastructure, the team? What issues have to be resolved from the onset, and what can be done in the process of implementing the first projects? Can you comment? Yes. Well, not quite from the scratch. Well, evolution is something that nobody cancelled yet, so we actually split from the underwriting team when the business needs in client analysis sharply increased. And then there was a strong team that analyzed everything that was happening in the company. The objective, actually, well, Pavel asked where we get ideas from. The ideas are all around you. Every day we face some problems, and if you take down those problems, you will get a welter of them. So then you may be depressed by the number of problems. So we couldn't see any lack of problems. So you should start with your data infrastructure, at your digital products and non-digital products that exist, and make sure it's sufficient or partly sufficient to launch those projects. Because if it takes a month or two to get data from the system, that is not enough for any data time team. Well, a week for obtaining any data. So first of all, you need to take care of the speed of getting the data about the client behavior that will allow to monetize that data. And there's a system in every company, and it's very difficult to get the data out of that system. And so you need to think about what to invest into. Underwriting is a good start here because historically this process has been built for 20 years. So do you need an external team from the market? And probably there's few people who know much about data science and insurance. Or do you need to grow your own team? What's more important, maths or understanding how the wheels turn in insurance business? Both is important. There must be a synergy. The insurance company has insurance experience, and people in the market know much about maths and machine learning. That's the Higher School of Economics, Moscow Physical Technical Institute, and some other. So people are looking for certain values. They want to learn more about insurance, and we use their expertise in data science, which is something very new for insurance. And we transfer from logistic regressions to market force models and neuronics networks naturally. Frank, and do you need to pay special attention and invest efforts into involving top management into the implementation of those projects? Maybe you need to prepare your business divisions and to explain to them what will happen in the future, or that happens naturally as that project factory is launched. Naturally, there may be a need for that. Well, you don't know how it goes, but the part of top manager is to use a couple of hours and to understand the basic maths so that they understand what the people are doing and what is the difference between different models, why time is spent on optimization of models and how much it costs. It's very important to provide an assessment process jointly with the team, because the responsibility for investment will be on the top management. And there are classical mistakes when beta testing is not done, when there is no analysis, and it's all done emotionally. And you must avoid this situation. You must maintain a register of projects and to cancel some projects. Otherwise, you will be very much disparaged. And the company that wants to survive must adapt. And so that feedback from the project is the most important thing here. I will support you. This is really important because it's important to understand that the data analysis technologies is not a crystal ball where you put the data and get money, but you need to count that money. And Frank is absolutely right. Before you start launching a project, you need to work on how you assess the business efficiency. Sometimes the business efficiency is not expressed in money that you save or earn, but in increased response to the changes in external environment. Frank, thank you very much for your comment. And actually, after we've understood what components we need to launch that factory, we need to make a small step. And quite often, retail banks and insurance companies do not do that. And as a result, the first few projects fail. And sometimes the very idea of that data monetization is compromised. And this small step is as follows. Somebody has to work at a factory that manufactures machines. There are some turners and millers. There are analysts who work for the financial companies, but a factory cannot work in an open field. So the data monetization factory in any company is embedded into the existing structure. And there's a lot of issues about their factory interrelationship with the existing subdivisions. There must maybe a central unit of analysts, or maybe each subdivision has to have their own analyst who knows the specifics, but they don't know what's happening next door. And the well thought of distribution of this analytical team and clear formulation of the rules of the game between business and analysts, developing KPIs for the businesses and for the analysts so that they don't interfere with one another is very important. And unless you do that, the factory will not produce any product and the data will not be monetized. And InsurTech, in my opinion, has one of the biggest teams of data scientists and analysts who constantly work for the purpose of insurance. And my question is to Alexander, who is the head and who is the main driver for innovation at InsurTech. Alexander, tell us, how are the analysts distributed in your company? Are they all in the central unit or not? And did it take you long to form that team? And is that the endpoint? Or possibly the analysts' lives will change with time, and maybe you're thinking about that. And what are the disadvantages, pros and cons for different systems of analyst distribution, and who must initiate new business cases? Is it the business that should come to the analysts, asking them to help with the inefficiency, or the analysts must come to the businesses and look for inefficiency? Can you comment on that? Yes. Well, let's start with your last question. I think it's a two-way street. I believe that our company has one single center, which is with the strategic project management unit, which has some analysts, and inside these business units, there are also teams of people who historically worked on tariffication systems, and they are the main bulk of the people who offer new models from the standpoint of retail. In other businesses, this is not developed as much, and in our opinion, this is how the structure should look. So there is a competence center, one competence center, which globally sees what's happening in the company. They control the analytical work. They also invest additional resources, and we will be trying to provide new cases when new analysts come to us to work, and then we transfer them to business units. And probably the cross-functionality of these people will be better than if you hire people from the market. So, in our opinion, such a center and the business must participate locally, because it's very difficult for us to come to businesses and offer something revolutionary without understanding the specific features of the business units. So we have such people in some units, and we are going to impose such analysts to other business units. Well, if people are only in one center, they won't have business competences. And if people are only in business units is that they won't have an overall picture. There will be no synergy, and there will be no transplanting successful projects to other business units. And we some models that really work that can be actually implemented in other business units, because the essence does not change very much from business to business.
Well, it's clear that these people should have right to make mistakes, and it's a very important thing. Why? Because how did we start our business? For a long period of time, we had been studying the business case, as you can recall that. Yes, I remember quite well, as though it happened yesterday. So in the course of the development, we had different ideas that had to be changed, some models, and you have to have the right for mistake. As for motivation, we talked about that. Frankly speaking, as of today, the model of motivation is not transparent in order to achieve this effect. How can we synchronize it with motivation? Now we are building it according to this principle. We have a number of models, and we would like to launch them in a certain timeline. And we will have successful examples and some examples that will be failure. And of course, it would be good to have only a positive effect. But of course, we may have mistakes, we may have failures, and that helps us to get the necessary experience and to educate people. Monetizing data in this process, right? Yes, okay. Fine, thank you. Very interesting, very detailed analysis. Dear colleagues, do we have any comments or additions to that? Pavel, please. Well, I can share with you our Mozgostrach experience. When we started back in spring, we wanted to make it as a standalone project, but we understood, and I understand, that you cannot introduce innovations in the business that can negatively undermine business. So finally, we introduced this function into the already existing business, and now it is showing good results because it enables us to include all the lines of business, all the segments, and it helps us to interact with the distributors, with clients in an efficient way. We are a large company in Mozgostrach, and to make a standalone team to build it, it would be very difficult. That's my experience. It's a very important point. So if a business has these characteristics, you can have a hybrid model implemented, and it helps you to achieve a certain level of trust between departments and the head office and the units, what you have mentioned. The readiness of business to have innovations is quite high, and there is an exchange of ideas of how some business processes can be optimized, and this cross-functional interaction helps to monetize data and to generate ideas in a faster way. Ilya, I think we mixed two issues here, two questions. Innovations in general, if we speak about them in general, it should be seen as a separate unit because the bureaucracy should not impede creativity. And when innovations matures, some companies, they separate it and establish a certain department that is in charge of innovations. But analytics is the second aspect. It's a separate function. It should not be mixed with innovative areas of business. And analytics in the company, CDO, should be called a CFO or CEO. And it can be included into operational department or any other department. But there should be a person who will be responsible for this area. To work with data, to work with analytics is a multifaceted job. To control all the systems, to unify them, to control the quality, to control how the data is stored. And the companies can be centralized, can be decentralized, and there are no golden rules as to how it should be structured. Ilya, you are right. But there are some specifics and some nuances. From project office to innovative business, and this shift, it should be made in an efficient way. Yes, I agree with you. It's a very good comment. Ilya and Pavel, they are right. And when analytical function is a new thing, it is perceived as innovation. Then you have to check the hypothesis, and you have to understand how you will optimize business processes by monetizing data. And after the pilot projects are successful, you can unify that. That's what is happening in the West. In some insurance companies, we see the following. There is a hybrid model. The center unit is testing the business hypothesis, and then using their own analysts, they optimize their development, the groundwork that has been done before. So it is tested, and this function is separated from money-making function. Colleagues, we are turning to the last question. Just 15 seconds for the comments for each of you. Can insurance companies receive in mid-term or long-term strategic advantages if they build these systems before the others do that? As we have already discussed, the later they start, the less probability to survive they have. I agree. I think we can say that it is already late to make this decision to move forward in this direction. You should have done that 2 years ago. Pavel? I totally agree. It is already late. And you should have done that 1 year ago. You have to invest into the time machine to go back to the time 3 years ago and to do that with the relevant basis for break-even point. It is late, but better late than never, you know. Yes, you are right. I would like to say that you have to live somehow and you have to survive. So it's better to start now if you haven't started yet. It's not a standard market, and if we ponder upon the team, and there is a drop in the birth rates, and there are some aspects related to telecom business, to what our government is doing, and you have to hurry up, certainly. And you have to pay more attention to it. And this forum is quite indicative. data analysis, data, these are the terms that have been constantly used during these 2 days. This is the first time we've had InsurTech session, these forums organized by the central bank, and there are unified efforts that are taken in order to establish this center of competences. Thanks. We should extend our gratitude to central bank for organizing that, for organizing these sessions. In 1989, established the first private company. We cannot survive as insurance companies without data analysis. You can transfer everything to outsourcing, and the only thing that you cannot transfer is underwriting. So it is never late. And now it is not late. The one will win who has a more detailed model developed. It's a constant battle. The one who does that faster will win, no matter whether he starts earlier or later. The speed is the vital thing here. 20 years ago, it was the beginning of market development. There were 3 factors: the age up to 30 and after 30. There is a foreign car or a domestic car, and city. Yes, and the experience of driving. And there was the table, three from 25 to 50, and the experience from 3 years to 5 years. And one company has set the experience at another point. And now we have specific tariffs for everything. Not about who does that faster and who implements that faster. As it has been mentioned, the mass customization, that is the most recent trend when insurance companies, they provide not just a general tariff, but an individual, personalized tariff. And it is changing dynamically. And if we have a look at the international experience, we see that it is losing its significance up to risk management. Pay as you drive, it's another concept, but still, it can be applied, for example, to CNC model. And for example, if you go outside the Moscow Ring Road, then the risk gets higher. So they want to sell you not a product, but they would like to satisfy their own need. And there is the necessity to manage the risk. And if you go abroad, the risk is higher. Person feels that, a client feels that, and they lease a car, for example. They have 100% risk, and when they go back to their country, then the risk goes down. So when a client needs to manage the risk, then he makes this decision. Dear colleagues, this positive comment, we finish our session. Thank you very much for coming here, and it's a very important topic. And if you have additional questions, and the booth number 20, robotization and monetization. Just right next to the exit from this hall. The speakers will be there, and you can ask them questions. And thank you very much, and goodbye.